if I told you you're no longer in timeline 863? What if I told you you're no longer subject 4? I'm sure that'd be met with some confusion, suspicion, and maybe even a little anger. And when I posted the last episode, many of you were coming to this knowledge for the first time. So I'm here to tell you how we actually got here. I can understand your surprise. Up until the time machine, most of you haven't even been aware of alternate timelines. But since that final video, I've come to know a great deal more about how this universe works. For instance, did you know that timeline 863 isn't the 863rd timeline? The name of the timeline? Largely arbitrary, only relative to the timeline it branched off of, which is relative to the timeline that it branched off of. For instance, the timeline that Deb calls Timeline 1, in which she helped develop the time travel machine and continued to fracture many timelines, is really only her Timeline 1. We really have no way of knowing how many timelines and variants are out there. But we do know, based on history, that there are definite points in time that can cause an entire timeline to fracture and create an alternate reality. This was one such point when we first learned about absolute points. You see, an absolute point is a choice that can go one of two ways. There's no way to avoid it, escape it, or run from it. The choice will always be there, waiting. All you can do is choose. On March 5th, it could have gone one of two ways for us, but the truth is, it actually did. Technically speaking, both events happened. You only saw the break-in, where he failed to obtain the emulator. But since that was an absolute point, we know this moment went both ways, creating an alternate timeline where he did obtain the emulator because we failed to take Dee's warnings seriously. But there have been many moments that went different ways. Remember when we were trapped with the serum bomb? Well, that was an absolute point as well that went a different way. In this timeline, before the bomb went off, we broke through the wall and escaped. And not all timelines ended with such death and destruction. In this timeline, Woods approached B-27. Learning in this timeline his motives were completely different, being that he was a completely different person, which eventually led to a relationship between Subject 2 and B-27. And that's what leads us to this moment, the moment that I handed Scott the Absolute to continue to investigate it and keep it safe. This was an absolute point. We are the alternate timeline, and we are the result of that choice. Giving Scott the Absolute fractured timeline 863, creating the timeline that we are in right now, timeline 864. Like all absolute points, it went both ways. In timeline 863, I wasn't so willing to part with the Absolute. Timeline 863 still exists. It's still happening right now. But in timeline 863, things aren't quite like you remember them. In timeline 863, I stopped vlogging the adventures. Instead, I preferred a method of communication that was more controlled. I decided to write and log our investigations and share those with Subject 4, instead of filming everything. With the tool that I developed in the last episode, I was able to confirm this by communicating with my own alt. In fact, he compiled his next investigation into a book called The Redacted, where they uncovered a secret organization living right under their noses. We spent a great deal of effort publishing it and sharing it with the world here in Timeline 864 in order to never forget where we came from. In fact, if you want to read it, we've made the book available for purchase right now using the link down in the description below. Furthermore, we have linked our timelines through this tool so you yourself can communicate and help the team solve their current investigation they are facing right here on Substack. Again, link down in the description below. So what does that mean for 864? It means we have a job to do, no longer burdened by syntech like the other timelines. Now we can take on cases from other timelines in order to lend our help to those in need. More cases incoming. Stay alert, killers.